Hi everyone, welcome back to the Lumbermill devlog. For those new here or just need a recap, Lumbermill is a factory builder and management game I'm building solo in the Unity game engine. In the last video, I implemented a forest life cycle, from saplings sprouting to ancient trees dying off. I also added a new type of machine called the dry kiln. In this devlog, I've continued my work upgrading the game's factory system, and also worked on some key pieces of UI that will make the game a lot nicer to play. I know it's been a while, so let's get into it. A while ago, I removed the CNC and Assembler machines from the game, two machines that had this magical ability to create almost anything, with a particular focus on furniture and woodcrafts. The main problem with that is having just two machines that can do everything just isn't very interesting and really limits the sense of progression. Aside from that, it's important that in a game called Lumbermill, the player can make the key products a Lumbermill would produce. Raw materials such as beams, planks, bark, and even products such as veneer and ply. Manufacturing of things such as furniture are now less of a priority while I get these other early processes right. I spent a while planning out all of the raw materials that I'd like to be able to make with the factory, and how those processes might overlap. I arrived at a list of 6 manufacturing machines, which will be able to make a broad range of products, all with varying properties. This list obviously doesn't include things such as saws, which already exist in the game. So with that list in mind, I quickly put together placeholder art for each of the new machines. This will just allow me to build the machines in the world and get the functionality right before I actually design anything final. I also created the necessary C# files, one for each new machine, and added those to new objects in Unity, which would ultimately become the machines. As I'm keeping the door open to potentially translating the game in the future, I also added names for each of the new machines to the game's main text file, which has support for different translations and languages. Once all of that was set up and I finished off the other admin tasks in order to create a new object for the game, they all showed up correctly in the game's build menu. The first machine, the chipper, takes almost any wood product as input and breaks it down into small pieces. I added a drop down so the player can choose how big they want the chips to be, regular, fine, or sawdust. Here I've got 3 chipper machines, each with a different size setting chosen. When I hover over the items on the conveyor, they each have different properties reflecting the chip size. Obviously there'll be art to actually visualize these items, but they're just placeholder diamonds for now. That one was quite simple to add, so it gets ticked off on the Trello checklist. Next up is the veneer peeler, which takes debarked logs and slices them extremely thin into a sheet of veneer, which can be used for decoration or creating plywood. I had to create some new item properties first, and once I'd coded the machine itself, it turned out I'd forgotten to add the new item properties to the game text file, meaning I got this error when inspecting the items. Easy fix though, adding the properties to the text file, and once I'd done that, the machine took debarked logs and output sheets of veneer. At this point, I was actually starting to feel a little burnt out on the project. I've been working on Lumbermill full time for just over a year and had been working on it as a hobby project for a few years before that. 2021 was also a rocky year for me health-wise, so I needed a proper break to reset and come back to everything with fresh eyes. I headed off to Canada and got drenched by the wild Niagara Falls, explored some incredible landscapes in the mountains, watched a punch-up at the ice hockey in Calgary, and saw the awesome cities of Toronto and Vancouver. After Canada, I flew down to California and spent a few weeks living in a camper van which I picked up in San Francisco. I drove along the coast, visited some family, and saw the sawmill where the gold rush started. But most importantly, I visited some beautiful national parks with the tallest trees in the world. The redwoods and giant sequoias are mind-blowing, not to mention the insane variation from the granite peaks of Yosemite to the weird desert plants in Joshua Tree, where I spent my birthday hiking through an actual desert. It's impossible to condense everything into a short section of a video, but I think it's important to point out that productivity and motivation on these massive projects can definitely be hard to maintain sometimes, and I really just needed a long break after everything this year. It was definitely worth it, and I'm so glad I took the opportunity to see that part of the world. Nonetheless, I did have to come home to the UK, but this time with a fresh perspective, ready to get back into game development. I decided to ease back in by working on another feature that I've been itching to add for a while: status indicators. These are icons shown wherever an object in the world needs attention. This is a part of the game's UI, so I created a canvas and an object template from which the game will generate the indicators. I also created some initial data files or scriptable objects that actually represent the different types of statuses. These will include broken down, lacking water, lacking steam, and lacking power. I just made trees create a basic status when they spawn for testing, and this was what happened at first. The indicators aren't in the right place and they don't move with the camera. Looking at the scene view, it was clear that the indicators were generating relative to each other correctly at least. After double checking the Unity documentation for how to actually convert from world position to screen position, I ended up with this. You can move the camera around, zoom in, and the indicators will stay anchored to the object they're referencing. They also stay a consistent size, no matter how zoomed in you are. So that's all good. Next, I could design some icons for the various different statuses objects might have. I just started with a spanner icon to show that a machine has broken down. When I got that into the game, you can see that the icon appears and disappears correctly when the machine breaks down and is repaired. I definitely think it could be more clear though, so I decided to go for a solid white icon with a coloured background, rather than a clear icon with a white background. So with that working, I could then design some more icons. There are 6 as of making this video, and I'll be adding more as I polish the game and make sure everything is clear for players. These statuses aren't just limited to the indicators in the world though, they'll also have a text field in control panels. I added control panel text for all of the current statuses to the game's text file, and this was the result, replacing the previous basic alerts that were shown in control panels. I'm also going to use this system for highlighting other things, such as all the trees currently assigned to a lumberjack, but for now that feature is done, so it gets marked off on Trello. I decided that now would be a good time to draw some more item sprites, as at the moment there are only 4 when there are actually now hundreds of different item variations. So I got to work. I drew 48 new sprites in total, 24 each for maple and spruce. That doesn't cover all the items, especially as I'll be adding more species in the future, but it's definitely a decent chunk to start with. There are sprites for different sizes of debarked lumber and variations for when that lumber is split from over drying in the kiln. I also created sprites for wood chips and sawdust. I don't love the sprite for wood chips currently, but it'll do for now. That made a big difference in the appearance of the factory when playing, and everything added in this video is another step towards finishing the game. Alongside working on Lumbermill over the last few months, I've also almost finished a separate commercial project, which I'll hopefully be making some devlogs for very soon. So if you want to watch that when it comes out and keep up to date with Lumbermill videos, make sure to subscribe. Lumbermill is available for wishlisting on Steam, so if you haven't already, make sure to follow the link in the description and add it to your wishlist. It helps me out a lot and means you'll get notified when the game comes out or goes on sale. Special thanks, as always, go to my patrons, and in particular, I'd like to thank Warner M14, Lego Nerd, Dominic, Yelp1, Kleb, Devon, Pepper Trollman, and Mike James. That's all for this video. If you liked it, remember to subscribe, and I shall see you here next time. Thanks for watching.